Hi, welcome to Chapter 3, Part 2. We're going to look at some simple control structures and how to use them, and there's some pretty cute programs in this one. So you know from class that control structures are the do and order and do together, so we've been using that. But there are other ones too, and if you look at the bottom of your Alice screen, you will see them. So we can use them for conditional execution and for repetition. So conditional execution means you check a condition and there's a decision. And the decision is about whether or not something is going to happen, whether or not a block of code is going to be executed. So think about where you might want to do this. What I'm really talking about is the if-then statement. So what kind of questions could you ask with if-then, and what would you have happen in if-then? Well, games. Simulations, all sorts of things would fit this thing, and that's exactly where you all will be putting them to use. So let's go revisit that mummy. I know you missed it since the last movie. And the idea is that we want to check a condition because we're not really sure what's going on due to the camera angle. What kind of things maybe aren't you sure about? Well, here's a question I know you've been dying to ask. Is the mummy taller than the pharaoh or vice versa? How can we tell? All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to ask the question, and then depending on whether or not it's true, different things will happen. So very exciting. First thing I want to talk about is a flowchart. Flowcharts are really useful for laying out your plan. I'm hoping you've seen them in other places. But here's the question. Is the condition true? If so, do this. If not, do something else. And then it closes out, it finishes. So let's take a look at an example of it, but we've got to first figure out what question do you want to ask for the if-else. Well, I've already asked you your question. Which one's taller? Is the mummy taller than the pharaoh? And if the answer is yes, how will you know? And if the answer is no, how will you know? Well, let me show you. How about this? Whoever's tallest is going to turn around. We'll just do one quick rotation around itself. So how could we storyboard that? Well, how about this? If the mummy is taller, then the mummy turns one revolution, else the pharaoh turns one revolution. And in fact, that goes right back to this. Which object is the tallest? You have the tallest object turn around. Now, the condition in an if-then statement is a Boolean function, meaning returning true or false. Okay, so that's going to be part of it. Here's an example of it. Okay, so here we are with the mummy again. Let me play it, and then I'll show you how we made this. All right, so that's saying what? Well, it's saying that the pharaoh is taller. Cool. All right, now how do you program that? Well, here's your if-else down there. You drag it in, and it doesn't matter what you pick. Just pick true, but it really doesn't matter because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be fitting something in here. And so the question is, how do I get mummy is taller than pharaoh to be in here? I go to mummy, I go to properties, and I go to function, not properties, go to function, and we're talking about size. See that? So if the mummy is taller than, and you drag it into here, whoops. Sorry, I didn't do a good job of dragging. Let's try that one more time. There. If it's taller than the pharaoh, then stuff is going to happen, okay? And you all should know how to do this part. That's not the hard part. This is the tricky part, but hopefully you know it now. And one last thing, I could go ahead and make the mummy turn left, and I can also make nothing happen. So I can leave a do nothing, and that's just fine. So play around with that and see what you think. Okay, so what did we see in that? Well, I taught you how to drag in a function for the if-then statement, and the function had to be a true-false kind of function, a Boolean function. And also, we talked about how do nothing means that if the condition is false, Alice will skip this part and go to the next instruction. By the way, that could be in the true part as well. You know, if blah, 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 do nothing, that would work as well. It'd be a little bit odd, but you could do it. So here's a different scenario. Sometimes built-in functions won't work. We need something a little bit more, I don't know, snazzy. So the built-in function, for example, is taller than compares the heights. So we used this. That was great. But what if you want to make sure that the actor, remember this was a movie, that the actor is more than 2 meters tall? So how can we do that? Well, we're going to build our own function. Are you ready? Here we go. It's math. All right, so you can use these equalities and inequalities. And they are under the world. So, you know, world is always one of your objects. And if you go to the functions for a world, you will see this. It's very exciting. All right. So let me show you by doing this example. Okay, I could play it. It's not terribly exciting. All that it's saying is that if the mummy is greater than 2, then the mummy will turn. So obviously the mummy is greater than 2. And frankly, I don't know what the units are, but let's just assume they're meters because that's what all the units should be. So how do you get this? Well, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to drag in an if else. I just set it to true, doesn't matter. Then I go to the world. You see this? I'm clicking on the world up here. I go to the world functions and look at that. There's some math. So let's grab the a greater than b and drag it in right there. And just put any numbers in. It really doesn't matter. Okay, so whatever. And then how do I get the mummy's height to be in there? Well, I'm going to go back to mummy. And you can see right here, mummy's height is still under size. So I'm going to put that in the first box, and then I can change that to 2. And then you should be able to do the rest of it. Okay, so that is super useful. Remember that because you're going to want to use it. And just a quick recap. What we learned to do is how to do the inequalities and equalities using the world's built-in functions. And I showed you how first you just put anything in for A and B, and then you can replace it accordingly. Okay, so what we can do is write some code to make the mummy walk. Remember, this is a film. It's going to be a great film. But it's going to be a little bit more complicated because we need to alternate left and right leg motions. It's not going to look like a regular person walking. We'll talk about that later in the semester because it's actually super complicated. But for a mummy walk, think about what you want those right and leg motions to look like. And at the same time that those legs are moving, the body's going to move forward. Otherwise, you're just looking at legs moving back and forth, and that would be strange. Okay, so I want you to pause this, just really quickly sketch out a storyboard and try to implement it. All right, so pause, really. I'll know. Trust me, I'll know. Pause it, give it a shot, and when you're ready, come on back. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you didn't cheat. So here's the idea for the storyboard, or at least here's one idea, is that you want to do this in order, and then inside of it you want to do together. So first you're going to move the body in the left leg, and then you're going to move the body in the right leg. And so the idea is, and look where the, we're putting some comments in even into the storyboard so that we have an idea, and then hopefully we can use the storyboard to write a program. And the way that the leg will move is that the leg's going to move backwards and then forwards. That might be surprising to you. So we're going to take a look and see what that looks like in Alice. Okay, so here we go. Here's our mummy walking. Let's just play it and then we'll look at the code a little bit more closely. So sure enough, there's the mummy walking towards you and strangely moving its legs. One more time. And take a look at how the legs are going. And the reason I want you to take a look at that is take a look at this wording. That if you have it, it says that you see this, the sort of kicking forward, if the leg is turning backward and forward. And again, that has to do with the egocentric motion of the leg, what the leg is thinking about. So if you don't believe me, take a look at what it would look like if I had the leg go like this, because this sort of seems like this would make more sense, right? Watch the left leg. So kind of funny. Anyway, so you can see that just to have one step, that's a lot of code, right? And think about what you would want to have happen if you did multiple steps. Okay, so hopefully what you learned, and I'm hoping you're thinking a little bit to yourself, but I'm hoping you learned about the motion of legs and A, how awkward it is, but also how you have to write it in order to make it look somewhat like it's walking. Okay, so that was great. That was one complete step. That's not really all that satisfying because a mummy is unlikely to take one step with each leg and stop. So what if we wanted the mummy to take 20 steps forward? What would we do? Well, we'd use something called a loop, and this is another control statement. And it's really easy. It just allows us to repeat an instruction or a block of instructions however many times you want. And this word counted is really important, and we will be talking about it in class. So let's see what it would look like if we stuck this in a loop. Ready? Okay, so we have a loop, and I'll show you how to make it, and we're looping it 3 times. because really who wants to sit here and watch this more than 3 times? So that's one step. That's the second one. And that's the third one. Wasn't that exciting? Okay, so all that it looked like is this. We had this code already, right? The do together code. That is not new code. The thing that is new is this loop. And where does it come from? Well, you'll notice all the useful control structures and other things that we will look at later are down here. And so you grab the loop, let's just put it up top for fun. Come on, you can do it. There. And it doesn't matter, 2 times, 3 times, whatever. You can go back and change it. Okay, you can even have it be infinite times. You can make it be all sorts of functions and exciting things. And then you just drag your code and you put it in accordingly, and hopefully it'll stick. I had a little trouble today with the dragging. Okay, so if I just did this, this would be really interesting. But if I just did this, watch what would happen. He's kicking. Okay, so anyway, play with that. It's kind of fun. And hopefully from that, you learn some things that you'll be able to put into play when you're making your own movies and games. See you next time.